And then if you'll just notice in nature how that God will move among His universe, how that the world is tipped just a little bit to bring the hot and cold air together to make rain that waters your crops. How that God lives in His universe. Do you believe that? Sure He does. And some time ago I was talking to a person on the subject of God, and it was down in Kentucky. And he said to me, he was an infidel. Mr. Wood and I had been squirrel hunting, and we went over to ask if we could hunt on his place, and he said, "Oh, go ahead." He said, "Brother Wood said, this is me, and my pastor wants to hunt." He said, "Wood, you don't mean you got so low down till you have to carry a preacher with you all the time?" And he said, "No, this is just my pastor." He said, he likes to hunt, and said, I'd been camped out for about 2 weeks with beard about a half-inch long, and dirty as I could be from sleeping on the ground the way we were camping. I was out resting, and that's my way of resting, because I found God in nature. That was my first Bible, was God in His nature, in His universe. And he said, well, he said, it's all right, I guess, to associate with preachers. He said, but you know, I have my idea of those things. He said, I don't believe in any kind of religion. And there was another man sitting with him, and we went ahead talking about religion. They did for a while, and I just stood there eating an apple that I picked up off the ground. And this old man that was supposed to be the infidel, he said, I've often wondered, I'd like to meet one preacher. And said that was the one was over here at Acton that time. He said, you know, the old sister over here on the hill, I can't call her name just now. I said that man was standing there on the Methodist campgrounds, sponsored by the Methodist Church. That's strange, but it happened. And was having a healing campaign. Now you Methodists ought to believe that. John Wesley believed in it. Certainly he did. All the early reformers believed in divine healing. And he said, standing in the meeting that night, he spoke to the sister of this old woman over here, that my wife and I and her husband, all we could do, she's so far gone with cancer, the doctors had given her up weeks before, and to get her on a bedpan that morning. Said she was in such a condition. And said her sister attended that meeting, and this preacher called this woman's name and told her to come lay a handkerchief on this woman with the cancer, her sister. And she did that night, and the next morning she ham and eggs and cooked fried apple pies for breakfast and eat it. He said, I want to meet that preacher one day. I just stood there. And I said, would you know the preacher? He said, no, I don't know him. And Brother Woods looked toward me and winked. And I said, do you mean to tell me you don't believe there's God? He said, I wouldn't believe it unless I could see it. I said, how old is that apple tree? Oh, he said, I set it out there about 40 years ago. I said, it's only early September. We've had no cold weather or nothing. Tell me, sir, what is it that speaks, what intelligence speaks to that tree and makes that sap go down into the roots and hide itself for the winter? Pour water on a stump and see if it'll do it. Or set a pan full on it. And see if it'll go down and hide itself in the ground, dodging the cold weather. If it didn't do that, the cold weather would kill the tree immediately. But some intelligence runs the sap down into the ground, out of that tree, and keeps it warm from the leaves that's fell on the ground from the tree. And next spring, before even the weather begins to moderate, here comes the sap back up, bringing with it new life. Explain that to me. Tell me what does it. He said, I never thought of it before. I said, it's God in His universe. God times everything just right. He said, what's your name? I said, I'm Brother Branham. He said, that's the name of the man was over there. I said, that's right. He said, with all them whiskers and covered with squirrel blood. I said, that's just the same. I'm the person. He said, how did you know that woman? I said, I didn't. How did you know she was going to be well? Said, she just passed down the road here, she and her husband, a while ago, walking. I said, I didn't know it. Said, did you heal her? I said, no, sir. God showed it. God healed her. It's His amazing grace. He was eating on an apple, and he took a bite, and he turned his head and said, you go ahead and squirrel hunt. I looked around, and the tears was running down his cheeks. I put my arm around him. I said, brother, you believe him, don't you? He nodded his head like that and turned around and walked out to the barnyard. Oh, God is in His universe.